The NBA Civil War has officially broken out, with A.A. Wilson and supporters allegedly calling for fans to boycott Caitlin Clark games on one side, and the millions of new fans Caitlin has brought to women's basketball on the other. They are angry about 41 nationally televised games, and they don't understand why anyone would try to ruin the sensation. But you want to boycott the one player who has caused the revenue to go way up in the monetary values, which is what you want to do. Social media is buzzing about women's basketball and selling out arenas, but instead of celebrating this growth, some players and their fans seem determined to fight it. The real reason for this boycott attempt is that it exposes the uncomfortable truth about fame, jealousy, and the future of women's sport. The original fans are activist fans, and that's what they are. They don't like that you want to watch these games, and they don't like that you are 3 or 4 times as many of them. Did you see what's happening in the WNBA right now? There is a civil war erupting between fans over Caitlin Clark. Getting Caitlin Clark of the Fever will have more nationally televised games this season than any other player in the league. I apologize to LeBron, Luka, and every other player in the league, but let's face it, I've seen the NBA ratings and she's beaten most of them. Some WNBA fans are actually planning to boycott Indiana Fever games in an attempt to deliberately lower viewership numbers because they believe Clark is receiving too much attention. This isn't just a coincidence. The numbers show that Caitlin Clark will appear on national TV more than any NBA player this season, not just any WNBA player but any NBA player period, and that there are tens of you. Internet trolls, or those connected to the WNBA media ecosystem, are spreading the idea that fans should illegally stream games or not watch at all when the Fever play. That's why they're so angry right now, and my goodness, they're talking about boycotting. For years, a small but vocal group of hardcore fans have been the main voices in WNBA discussions. They have supported the league through thick and thin, often when no one else was paying attention. Now millions of new fans are flooding in, many of whom had never watched women's basketball before, and they are completely changing the WNBA narrative. This is completely unprecedented in basketball history, but it's not just about who gets more screen time. When you look at what's actually happening, the boycott movement reveals an uncomfortable truth. Some longtime WNBA supporters would prefer lower viewership than see Caitlin Clark succeed. They're willing to potentially harm the league's growth just to prove a point. We're not supposed to talk about it aloud, but maybe that's a big part, and straight white girls are a big part of it too. For example, it just came out of my mouth like that, just easily. Pointing out that this vocal minority doesn't represent the majority of fans' opinions about the Slows. They are now planning to boycott the Indiana Fever games in an attempt to influence the viewership because they truly believe they matter in the grand scheme of things. The truth is that we're witnessing a classic case of gatekeeping, where original fans who feel ownership over a niche interest suddenly watch it go mainstream and feel threatened by the newcomers. I'm not kidding when I say that this is the same pattern we've seen in music, comics, gaming, or any subculture that suddenly finds itself in the spotlight. Critics of the boycott movement point out how counterproductive it is if fans intentionally damage viewership numbers. They're not just hurting Caitlin Clark, they could also be harming the financial future of every player in the league. This boycott could have unintended consequences that ripple throughout women's basketball. Again, this is a minority of people, but the problem is that the foolish minority somehow has inhibited the WNBA. They are literally saying, Bobby, Indiana, we need to boycott Indiana Fever games so they don't get more national TV games next year. Players, WNBA teams, and other things. When you look at the financial aspects of professional sports, you quickly realize how counterproductive this boycott is. Before Caitlin Clark, the WNBA games were lucky to draw 200,000 viewers, but now they're drawing over 1 million, and that 5-fold increase isn't just a statistic. It's potentially life-changing money for every single player in the league. Those viewership numbers directly translate into dollars in players' pockets, making this boycott idea not just petty but also financially destructive. The WNBA isn't just choosing players' salaries at random, they're directly tied to something called media rights deals. These are the huge contracts that networks like ESPN, ABC, and CBS pay to broadcast games, and guess what determines how much these networks will pay? More viewers mean more advertising dollars, which means more money the networks will spend on broadcasting rights. All that does is hurt the players, regardless of who you are or what team you play for. The Fever should illegally stream the games. The WNBA is currently negotiating its next media rights deal, and if you want the players to earn more money, now is the worst time for fans to be talking about boycotts. Networks are watching these spikes in viewership with Clark and seeing dollar signs that they're willing to pay much more than they were before she joined the league. Those games with millions of viewers aren't just good for Clark, they're raising the potential ceiling for every single player's salary cap. They're actively trying to ungrow the game and threatening to boycott the Fever games. These people aren't fans of basketball, and they're not fans of the WNBA either. If you consider this, we're seeing 5 to 10 times as many people watching games with Clark as the league averaged previously. This means that networks might be willing to pay 5 to 10 times as much for the right to broadcast. This is exactly what the WNBA has been fighting for since its inception, the kind of mainstream attention that translates into serious money. They simply don't like Caitlin Clark because it has nothing to do with basketball or Caitlin Clark. I don't think there is a more egregious person to despise, so this is where the whole boycott idea becomes ridiculously ironic. Many of the same fans who have been calling for boycotts have been demanding better pay for WNBA players for years, and they have rightfully pointed out the salary disparity between male and female athletes. Now that a player is actually bringing in the viewership that could help close that gap, they want to tank the numbers, which makes sense. They simply don't like Caitlin Clark. It's a personal matter, and they will literally, I don't think they understand that there was no viewership prior to Clark, so if they boycott, would it really make a difference, and that all of this new money doesn't just go to one player? What's particularly frustrating is how short-sighted the boycott supporters are. They don't seem to understand that higher viewership creates a positive feedback loop throughout the entire league economy. When more people watch, more people buy tickets to see games in person, more people buy jerseys and team merchandise, more companies want to sponsor teams and players, and the entire economic ecosystem of women's basketball gets stronger. Benefits everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats. The money from these media deals is distributed throughout the league, raising minimum salaries and salary caps for all players. Veterans who have been working hard on relatively small contracts for years can finally see the kind of money they deserve. You're seeing prominent figures in the WNBA media space, and the reason I say media space is because the Twitter trolls somehow interact with the damn actual media on a two-way conversation every day. It's mental despite all the financial benefits, Clark. The double standard here isn't just surprising, it reveals something much deeper about how success is received in women's sports. If we sports fans wanted to watch this crap, we would have been doing so before Caitlin Clark got involved. I mean, I literally own 2 sports channels and I get paid for talking about sports. I wasn't watching this league. This brings to every player in the league an uncomfortable reality that we need to confront. Would any other sports fans actively try to boycott their most popular player? Let's face it, there's a jealousy that permeates the WNBA community that no one wants to acknowledge. Some well-known WNBA media figures have publicly expressed their displeasure with Clark's quick ascent, implying that it somehow undercuts the efforts of longtime players who have established the league. This sentiment is particularly strong among older fans and media figures who feel threatened by all the new attention Clark is bringing. Is it possible to boycott just one team's games like we all illegally stream them if they're against one of our teams? I'm talking about the old WNBA media, not the ones that will still be there in 5 years, but the ones that have developed expertise, built communities, and established themselves as authorities. For years, these committed insiders fostered a league that received little mainstream coverage. Then all of a sudden, this rookie shows up and attracts millions of new eyes overnight, attention that veterans with incredible talent never received despite years of elite performance. That kind of overnight success is bound to trigger complicated feelings media. Even though they're sitting there in places with Twitter trolls talking nonsense about players, they're shaking their fist at the screen every time they see someone who wasn't there with them when no one was watching. Now, I'm not saying that all criticism of Clark is unjustified when analysts point out her defensive shortcomings or discuss areas where she needs to improve. That's a legitimate basketball discussion. Some fans have noticed how she reacts to referee calls, finding her body language or facial expressions dramatic. However, this is where things get weird. Male players display the same behaviors without having to deal with nearly the same situations. When I saw it, I literally exclaimed, "What the is this real?" They truly believe they matter, typically slow. What's especially fascinating is how the goalposts keep moving with Clark. Remember how critics said she wouldn't translate to the college game, then when she dominated college basketball they insisted the pro level would be too physical for her now that she's proven capable of competing. The level of scrutiny that the microscope focused on Clark's every reaction reveals a clear double standard in how we judge athletes. The most perplexing aspect of this whole situation is the reasoning behind the boycott itself. These self-proclaimed true fans are allegedly trying to protect the league's integrity by working to reduce its viewership. They claim to want better conditions for players but actively oppose the very mechanism that would achieve that goal. Suddenly the narrative shifts to she's getting too much attention or the media is overhyping her. The pattern is unmistakable. I mean, they are truly pirating the small but vehicularly challenged bus at this point. While their boycott efforts could hurt everyone in the league, they label Clark's supporters as fake fans for not appreciating other players. I'm just saying that this is the same people we're dealing with, and what we're seeing isn't just petty jealousy, it's a fundamental clash of visions. On one side, those who have cultivated the WNBA as a niche community with specific values and culture, and on the other side, those who see Clark as a catalyst for turning women's basketball into a mainstream phenomenon, even if it means attracting millions of new fans who are unaware of its rich history and subtleties. These are the heroes and legends among legends who don't even flinch when the needle doesn't even tremble, hadn't even shaken, and hadn't even moved accidentally. They want a boycott, but they don't care about anything else. Okay, tell me how that goes. The truth is that when a player like Caitlin Clark draws this much attention to women's basketball, it creates opportunities for every single player in the league. We're witnessing it in real time, with increased attendance, more merchandise sales, and sellout crowds across multiple teams. This isn't just about one player getting limelight, agree. The truth is that despite what social media may lead you to believe, the majority of people in the world are decent. The only bad people are the minors, and the minority of idiots are particularly loud. The increase in viewership that's occurring right now is precisely what women's sports have been striving for years, and NBA executives and players are publicly thrilled about how this growth translates. As in women's soccer and tennis, where greater visibility elevated the entire sport, the WNBA renaissance has the potential to turn women's basketball into the global powerhouse it deserves. The players in the league are aware of this, and now is the time for the fans to embrace it as well. With better sponsorship deals and higher salaries for everyone, this is the moment when the financial tide starts lifting all players, not just the most popular ones.